Hey everybody, and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program. I did build this in my career save, but I don't know if I'm going to use it yet. This is kind of a proof of concept of a single-stage orbit rocket technology. So on the bottom here we've got 5 SSMEDEs, and for orbital maneuvering system we've got 2 AJ-10. I think they're the 118Ks, but don't hold me to that. This was just kind of a proof of concept test flight of something that I've been putting together over quite a while now, and something I didn't really want to embarrass myself with on live stream because it's probably been 6 or 8 months or so since I started trying to get one of these things to work. But as you can see, we're easily off the pad. Our thrust to weight ratio coming into about 1.2. I think it's 1.18 at liftoff, but it very quickly goes up as we start to burn off fuel. We don't even have to really start our gravity turn. The offset weight of this beast does that all for us. But like I said before, this is just a proof of concept. We don't have any real capacity for cargo to orbit just yet. It has been flight proven, but I probably need to go back and redo a bunch of that. I've made a bunch of changes since its last atmospheric test flight, and we certainly still need to do a reentry test just to make sure everything works out. All the tanks on here are the shielded procedural tanks, so in theory they should be able to survive a low Earth entry, deorbit, and then hopefully a nice enough glide slope to get us home. The one improvement I know is going to have to be made is those tail fins are going to have to be a little bit larger. By a little bit, I mean somewhat significant, so that we can maintain stability on our re-entry, as we will be extraordinarily light on fuel. But we're coming up on the speed of sound now, so we'll actually start to lean into our prograde vector. And this thing needs so many more stability passes to get the weight balance on the engines right, but of course, since it shifts so much, because basically everything except for that fairing right there just above the engines is all fuel tanks. There's even fuel tanks in the wings, and there's fuel tanks inside other fuel tanks, which makes things extra awesome. But this thing does take quite a bit of concentration to fly to orbit. That's why I'm doing this commentary here in post, because most times we can get to orbit, sometimes we won't. But we'll start to lean into our gravity turn now. Actually a while ago, and just kind of let the nose pitch itself down. Not a whole lot of authority for me, just a couple of quick taps. You have to be extra efficient with this thing on the way up. Those SSMEs do burn through fuel at somewhat of a significant rate. But as our G load starts to climb, we'll actually start to push the throttle back a little bit and stretch out their runtime. But a lot of the ability to get this thing to orbit is that nice delicate balance between time to apogee and runtime left on the engines. It's not so much of a concern now. We're concerned more about staying stable, staying on a clear ascent path. But as we start to come to that throttle back, see, we just had our first one there. It will become more of an issue, especially as we come out on main engine cutoff, which really there the timing is extra important. Well, this is a simulation. I've got 12 minutes left on it, but a coast to apogee and then a resulting apogee kick was not really in my plans. Although it could be done on the OMS engines. We do have about 100 meters per second there. It'll be right around 90 when we actually get to orbit, because of RCS usage. But they're really intended there to just do the work of deorbiting this thing, and with enough fuel left over to use the RCS controls to help guide us on in for our approach through the atmosphere before there's enough air around the vehicle to make it stable and keep it all in check. So we're coming in. We've done a bunch of throttle backs now. We're trying to keep our G load below 5. I would like to crew rate some approximation of this vehicle in the future, although I imagine the added mass from making this thing crew suitable is going to radically alter its design. So there's not a whole lot of point to it, but if it can be done, why not? I think it's also saving us a bit on efficiency also. just to make sure we're not exceeding too much for thrust to weight limit, coming up on 4.5 our current TWR. Also remembering why I usually speed through these launches. And yeah, there's enough fuel burned off in the vehicle now to where it's starting to show some of this instability. We'll bring our throttle way back now. We think we've got another step in our throttle back before we're actually going to shut down 4 of our RS-25 engines and just leave the center core engine running. And of course we'll ramp that up to full throttle. As we approach 5G limit, again we'll go for our throttle back and then eventually our shutdown. Now, if you touch the controls a little too much on this thing, it just it wants to nose down. Most of its mass is towards the belly, and that's one, because it looked good, but two, it'll help us keep the belly down when we're on reentry and help maintain that stability when we're trying to fly this thing hopefully towards a runway. There's a 4-engine shutdown and throttle up on our central, I guess I'm going to call it our number 1 engine, RS-25DE. So our current thrust to weight ratio is a very manageable 1.48-ish or so. And we've got it nicely timed. Our timed engine burnout at full throttle is 1 minute 45 seconds. Our timed apoapsis is 1 minute 23. Of course, that's counting down at a little slower than real time. So we'll actually come pretty close to the bar on this one, which does make me very happy that we can have a successful test flight of this vehicle and a successful proof of concept that you can in fact bring and build a single staged orbit that is in theory capable of a glide slope recovery on the current technology that I have unlocked in my career RP0 playthrough. Of course, our runtime is going to be right on par. You can see our time to apoapsis is falling a little bit faster, but the two numbers are starting to catch up to each other, which does make me happy, although the orbital speed and the vacuum delta V figures were not exactly where I wanted them to be, and I was prepared to stage in those two AJ-10s if we needed help rounding out this orbit. All in all, a quality test flight, and I hope to be implementing something similar, although I've got a couple of other things on the build list for the live shows that I need to get to before this really becomes a priority, but I do expect this will be making its way into the series sometime in the near future. It might not look like this, might not look anything like this at all, but now that I've got the proof of concept down, I think we can go from there. I am relying heavily also on the stock hold to maneuver node prograde, because it really is just about the only way to keep this thing stable later in flight once most of the fuel is burned off. Were I operating in 1.2.2, where you could direct fuel flow and order your fuel flow, there's our camera change, and there's orbit. 136 by 155. It's a shallow orbit, but it is an orbit, and we still have the entirety of our OMS system left in the tanks, as we can use those for deorbiting, or we can use those to circularize our orbit. Probably not both, though. Anyway, thanks for hanging out, everybody. I really do appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed this very quick proof of concept video. So until next time, see you later.